The second sign of Moses, as stated in Exodus 4, verse 6, then Father said, "Put your hand inside your cloak." So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It became as snow white. "Now put it back into your cloak," he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored, like the rest of his flesh. What I just read is the scribe's lie that has been put in place, what actually was the second sign. But even Father uses this to speak. So, the hand that Moses put inside his cloak most likely was his writing hand, the hand by which he wrote the books attributed to him. And what this shows by his writing hand becoming leprous is that his writings would become leprous, filled with lies and distortions. And his writings would have to be restored in the latter time, which is now. The hand put back in and then pulled out and restored. So even on the corrupted level, this speaks of what they actually did. They probably didn't know this when they wrote it, that it would show this. But Father even turns what they've done to our benefit. What we see in the story is the first sign is performed before Pharaoh, but there is no mention of the second sign being done. How likely is it that Moses would not have followed the instructions that he was given to do this second sign if they didn't believe the first one? He would have done it. So this is another indication of the lying pen of the scribes. They have altered something here and changed things. Now we can see where they have placed, the scribes had moved these stories, altered it a bit, and put it in other places so it's not in the right timeline. So we see the story is moved into Exodus chapter 34 and verse 29. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant, because he had spoken with the Creator. Then Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to him. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and he said to them, and he spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near to him, and he gave them all the commandments of the Creator had given him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking to him, he put a veil over his face. Okay, so this is part of where the story ended up, of the face shining as the sun. They've attributed it to Moses, but this is not who it belongs to. We have to look at the other part of the story that they moved even further on. So in Numbers 12, chapter 12, we have the whole story about Miriam and Aaron supposedly coming against Moses. This is not something that would have happened with people who are truly following Father. The scribes have altered these things and put things in here. And they've attributed this thing of leprosy coming upon Miriam. And notice Aaron doesn't get affected at all, but he's the man and he's supposed to be the head. Why isn't he affected? It's just Miriam. This is the lying pen of the scribes. Miriam was always one with Moses. She was present with him and Aaron before Pharaoh. The scribes have written this out because women can't play a role. This erroneous, wrong teaching. But they've attributed the leprosy happening to Miriam, the second sign. Miriam becomes leprous, and then she is prayed over, and the leprosy is removed. Okay, what's going on here? Again, they have moved the story. It is Miriam that face be shown like the sun. It is the picture of the woman in Revelation 12, the woman clothed with the sun. Miriam became clothed with the sun. This was the second sign that was done before Pharaoh and the people of Egypt. But they still did not believe this. This ties in with the higher level understanding of Joseph's dream. We've already briefly touched on the 6 sons, but I'll re-mention it here. The 6 sons of the 2 brothers that bow down, it's the stars that bow down to Joseph, Joseph being the Sabbath. It is the 6 days of the work week that bow to the Sabbath. The restoring of the true Sabbath will come about by knowing the correct 6 work days. This has come about in these later times. This was done when the 2 witnesses came 2,000 years ago. So when we look now at the other 2 parts of Joseph's dream, the sun and the moon bowing down, we see that the sun is the same thing as the second sign of Moses. The sun bowing down, this woman clothed with the sun, Miriam clothed with the sun, bowing and recognizing the Sabbath of Father before the people. It would cause some to believe, but for the most part, Pharaoh and the rest of Egypt did not believe and wouldn't let them go. This happened with the bride, those who were present with the 2 witnesses 2,000 years. They became engulfed with the light of the Spirit, with the outpouring of the Spirit upon them, the Holy Spirit. This event did happen, not as a time as depicted in Acts, but it did happen. And we have the higher level understanding of the second sign happening 2,000 years ago, but the world did not believe. They came and attacked and put a veil over her, darkening the sun, blackening the sun, as is told would happen. The sun would become covered in sackcloth, become black. I'll now tie this in again with the 2 curses, first 2 curses in the garden. As I mentioned in other videos, the first curse is the curse upon the snake. The Sabbath gets turned into the false Sabbath of the snake, and it has to be restored. So that curse of the snake Sabbath, the false Sabbath of Saturday, has to be restored to the true Sabbath. This happened 2,000 years ago. It happened at the time of the Exodus. It happened 2,000 years ago when the 2 witnesses came, and it's happening again. The first sign has been done. Wednesday has been restored, at least with the bride that is forming. And now the second part is happening. The second bride is becoming clothed in the sun, in the light of the sun. And we do still need an outpouring of the Holy Spirit to happen. So we look for that to take place. So this relates to the second curse in the garden, being the curse upon the woman. She must overcome the child that comes about through sin, the Benjamin, the liars. We have to overcome the lies that they have put in place to see the truth which comes about by the Holy Spirit. And so it is becoming the woman clothed in the sun that overcomes the second curse in the garden. This now leaves the third curse, the third part of the higher prophetic meaning of the moon bowing down to Joseph in his dream, the third sign of Moses. What is it truly? I'll give a heads up. That third sign, supposedly we are told it is the blood, the water turning into blood. And yet this is the first thing that Moses done, and it's attributed to being one of the supposedly 10 plagues that came upon Egypt. They didn't believe and they weren't let go. If Father said if they didn't believe the first 2, we can infer that by doing the third they would believe. they certainly didn't believe. And these 3 signs are pretty worthless if he has to go through 10 plagues before they get let go. But what we see is the lying pen of the scribes again. The 3rd sign is the corrupted 10th plague. So I will have to do a video on that, explaining how the Passover as we see written in Exodus is not what took place, what it really is, and how we are looking for that 3rd sign to take place in the near future. Blessings. Enjoy the Sabbath today, Wednesday.